We are 1 day and 1 week away from the NFL draft. So we are breaking down our final positional rankings. Today, we're going to break down our top 10 rookie running back rankings for rookie drafts in Dynasty Fantasy Football. This is obviously without the added context of draft capital and, landing spot, which we'll talk about after the intro. But for the most part, this is just like talent-based rankings of these running backs. We'll break down our 10 best running backs in the 2023 draft. But with that being said, Danny, how you doing?
Doing well, doing well. And yeah, once we do these post-draft rankings, I will tell you right now, at least my rankings, both of our rankings are going to be heavily influenced based off the draft capital. Because quite frankly, RB4 to like RB14 this year, if you have our RB14 consensus ranked as your RB4, I will not bat an eye because that is how close a lot of these guys are. A lot of the committee backs that fill different roles, a lot of them bring a lot to the table in different aspects of the game. And it's going to be a lot of fun to break down. Realistically, again, whoever gets day two capital, going to move up. Whoever falls, going to fall down. But we're going to discuss all that and more in today's video. And let's get started. Let's hit the intro.
So as Danny kind of teased before the intro, just to give you guys some added context, because this is how much draft capital is going to impact this list going forward. I have 7 running backs or 8 running backs between a 725 and 800 grade in my grading system, which is basically a late third rounder to late second rounder / early third rounder. So there's a big cluster of running backs in this class that are probably going to go somewhere between pick 60 and pick 115 in the actual NFL draft. And it's going to really depend on who goes where, when they go, and all that kind of stuff. So let's break down the top 3 running backs. And of course, these guys have tail of the tapes on the channel, breaking them down in depth. So we are going to breeze through Bijan, Gibbs, and Zach Charbonnet and just give you the kind of pros and cons rookie draft outlook. And we'll probably try and speed through these guys so we can talk about the rest. But of course, the first running back on this list, we all know who it is. It's Bijan Robinson, running back from my Texas Longhorns. I'll let you take it away.
Yeah, and I mean, it's pretty simple. Nobody was confused or surprised about Bijan Robinson being the RB1 off the board here. He's got the requisite NFL bell cow size, 5'11", 215 pounds, ran an official 4.46 at the combine. In terms of his pros, you could literally count them on, 10 hands at this point. Like, there's everything this guy can do from the running back position. He does well. Most elusive back in PFF college history. The receiving ability out of the wazoo. You can line him up out of the backfield. You can split him up out wide. Good understanding of route concepts from the running back position. And in terms of scoring ability, 1.32 touchdowns per game played, including 20 in his junior season. He has a knack and he knows how to find himself into the end zone. Quite frankly, there is nothing, like I said, that this guy does not do well. Nothing's really going to stand in the way, barring health, for him inevitably being an NFL workhorse. In terms of projected NFL draft capital, the first running back off the board, whether that's, top 10, whether that's top 20, it really depends on when the NFL says, okay, it's time to take the running back, because quite frankly, this guy is a lock to go really anywhere in the round 1 range. I wouldn't be shocked if he was, in that 8 to 20 area as the sweet spot. Maybe the Falcons at 8, Bears at 9. Team in that area could make a ton of sense for Bijan Robinson. But regardless, in terms of his NFL outlook, this is a bell cow NFL running back who's going to flirt with 300 plus touches a year in his NFL career. And he is the 101 in super flex drafts and rookie one quarterback drafts. Any draft format for that matter in terms of rookie drafts, Bijan Robinson is going to be your first overall pick.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, you got to look hard to find weaknesses with this dude because he's explosive and the receiving ability. I mean, you might look at a 63rd percentile target share and be like, oh, that's solid for a running back his size. I mean, he's sharing the field with Roschon Johnson and Keelan Robinson, who were both used only as receiving backs because they didn't want to take carries away from Bijan Robinson. If he was alone in a backfield getting like workhorse volume, like, at Wisconsin, like Jonathan Taylor was coming out, he might have had like a 90th percentile target share because he's that good as a receiver as well. So yeah, we can breeze right through Bijan Robinson. Everybody knows who he is and what he represents. Go check out the tail of the tape if you want to know more about him. Same goes for this next guy, who's Jahmyr Gibbs, running back 2 for both of us here in the 2023 NFL draft. Pros, he's not just a good receiver, he's an elite receiver. He has an elite receiving skill set, top 3 in every metric across the board. You guys should be able to see on the screen right now when you pull up his like campus to Canton, like receiving market adjusted, bullshit, all that stuff that we throw out the nerd stats. He's on par with Christian McCaffrey. He's on par with Alvin Kamara. He's on par with the elite receiving backs around the NFL. He ran in the mid 4.3s, so he has home run speed. He has home run ability. He's elusive. He has movement tools out the wazoo. He can make you miss easily in a phone booth, and he's highly productive for multiple years. He's been on the fantasy radar since his freshman season at Georgia Tech, which we know now kind of translates. When you have a guy that's that productive, gets better every single year, he's decisive, he has great rushing instincts. The only cons with Jahmyr Gibbs is that he's small, right? He's 5'9", 199 pounds. He never carried a big workload at Georgia Tech or at Alabama, never really had a goal line role in college either, and his pass protection is a little bit suspect. His effort is solid, but because
a receiving standpoint, like you kind of said. And you mentioned, he's not a big quote unquote like tackle breaker, run through you type of guy. But if you're making people miss, that's just as valuable as running through them. So in terms of Jahmyr Gibbs, like he showed he can win as a runner. He showed that he's an elite receiver. And while he may not be, a 250 carry guy, if he flirts with, 180 to 200 rushing touches and 100 plus targets, like you're not complaining at all. Look at Austin Eckler.
Yeah, exactly. The only issue I have with Gibbs a little bit though is that he has to reach that
Agreed.
level. Otherwise, he might be, doomed to be like back end of RB1, high end RB2 type of territory. But Aaron Jones also is a comparison I've heard thrown around for him. My comp for him is like a more lanky DeAndre Swift, I think is a pretty decent one there. But we can move on to the next running back here, which is Zach Charbonnet, running back from UCLA. Again, tail to tape up on the channel right now. He's got a lot of pros as well. Size, 6 foot, 215 pounds. He's great through contact. He's very strong, very powerful, great subjective traits as well, which I think is an underrated part of his game. I think he has, some of the best vision, some of the best patience, some of the best toughness. I think he's the most consistent down-to-down running back in the entire class. He led the class in EPA per rush. He led the class in positive play percentage. So he's going to get you what's there and then some pretty much every single play, no matter what. And I also think the most underrated parts of his game are these next two things. He's a great receiving back, not just a good receiving back for his size. He is a great receiving back overall. He was top 5 across the board in yards per route run and target share, like all of the receiving back metrics that, your Kenny McIntoshes and your Jahmyr Gibbs and Deuce Vaughns are going to rank highly in. He was right there with those guys as a bigger running back. And he's a great athlete. Everybody thinks he's some like James Conner plotter running back. He had a 94th percentile relative athletic score. His 1.53 10-yard split is 0.02 lower than Devon Achane's 1.51 10-yard split and Jahmyr Gibbs' 1.52 10-yard split. He's got 15 to 30 pounds on those two running backs, and he's running explosiveness burst-wise right there with him, and it's the first thing that pops out when you watch a UCLA tape of Zach Charbonnet is that he's an explosive running back once he finds a hole. Great scoring ability as well. We know he has the size to be a workhorse back and a goal line back. Over a touchdown per game, even if you include his games at Michigan, because he scored 11 touchdowns as a true freshman as well. The cons for him is that he's a senior. He had to transfer away from Michigan, but he did get better throughout his college career, so it definitely makes sense there. He never commanded more than like 46% of his backfield's touches, even at UCLA. So maybe he has fresh legs. That could be a positive for him, but he never really commanded a big workload. And then in pass protection, he's physical and the effort is there, but the technique just kind of needs some work. So for me, I think Charbonnet is one of the more underrated backs in this class, and he is much closer to Gibbs than most people probably have him.
Like you guys would have saw in the graphic, like he's right in that tier with Jahmyr Gibbs, obviously Bijan in his own, Charbonnet and Gibbs being that next tier. He is the last running back before that round, or running back 4 to running back 13 type of avalanche where you could basically pick your poison. Because I do think, like you kind of said, this is a guy that profiles into an RB1 caliber running back in the NFL. Think of, I mean, you're going to talk about the comps, but your Joe Mixons, your DeMarco Murrays, your thick tone setting between the tackles running backs that have skill sets that can contribute on third downs. Like we saw Joe Mixon the last couple of years command upwards of 60 plus targets. We saw, heck, DeMarco Murray had one of the best all-time fantasy football seasons in 2014. Do I think Charbonnet is ever going to near that type of workload? No, but can he be a 250 carry, 60 plus target type of back nearing 20 touches a game? Absolutely. And for that type of ceiling, for that type of value at the running back position, anywhere inside the top 10 of your rookie drafts between, the 107, 108 to 120 mark, assuming he gets that day 2 capital, is fine when it comes to Zach Charbonnet. If you need a running back and you're debating him between, like Zay Flowers, like Michael Mayer, Quentin Johnson, guys like that, I think Charbonnet is well within that mix.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, he's more in the mix and caliber of prospect for me than he is for like James Conner, David Montgomery, plotter type of running backs. I think he has much more juice than that, evidenced by his athletic testing. So hopefully he goes round 2 in the actual NFL draft. That'll, pretty much lock him into like 108, 109 in my rankings. So I definitely really like Zach Charbonnet. So like I said, those first 3 guys, all have tailed the tapes if you want a more in-depth look. Really wanted to give enough time for us to break down the rest of these guys because we haven't really talked about them a lot. We haven't ranked them for sure. And all of these guys kind of have differing skill sets. Some of them are good early down guys. Some of them are good third down guys. Some of them are really fast. Some of them are not that fast. Like, pick your poison, whatever you're looking for. The NFL draft capital will absolutely influence this part of the list. For me, the way I graded these guys was just based on their talent. I didn't take into account what NFL draft capital they're expected to get, nothing like that. I was just like, their film and their numbers, what does it equal? And to me, that equaled Tank Bigsby RB4. And we can talk about him right off the top, running back from Auburn, because for me, when you look at his pros, he's got a lot of the skill set that you want out of a fantasy running back. He's elusive as hell. He's much more fluid than I expected. He has a ton of ball carrier moves kind of in his repertoire. He was top 5 in the class with 33.65 tackles avoided per attempt. He has great size, 6 foot, 213 pounds, and he uses all of it when he runs. His nickname is literally Tank, and you can see why in all of these clips that you're going to see on the screen. He led the class. 76% of his yards came after contact, which was top 5 in the class, or was best in the class, sorry, and top 5 in the class in yards after contact per attempt with 4.16. He has great pedigree too. We talked about this guy his freshman year as well. Back in 2020, the conversation was, man, we got Bijan, we got Tank, we got Gibbs. Like, these guys were all kind of one in the same back in 2020. He's great in pass protection, second best pass blocking efficiency in the class at 98.2%, and a top 7 back in the class in PFF pass blocking grade. And he also has a decent receiving profile, 19.6 targets per route run, and a 91st percentile target share of 13.64%. He needs a little bit of work, like refinement wise as a receiver, but the profile is pretty decent for him. And then as far as his cons, my comp for him is Cam Akers. And like Akers, he can be inconsistent down to down. He did not trust his offensive line at all, just like Cam Akers didn't at Florida State. And I can't blame him because they never ranked higher than 90th in the entire country. And he also doesn't really run that decisive or that patient at times. Like, he's kind of a boomer bust type of runner. And he ran a 4.56 at the combine, but he did actually run a 4.45 at his pro day. So, I mean, if you average those two out, probably about a low 4.5 type of speed. So he doesn't have like elite speed, but pretty decent speed.
Yeah, and the most important factor here is he passes the name test, like you kind of said. You give me a running back named Tank Bigsby, he gets second round draft or day 2 draft capital in the NFL draft. Like you kind of mentioned, could be that, Cam Akers type of create in the backfield, like he's kind of done over his career at Auburn. Very, very similar profile to that of Cam Akers. Obviously, we saw Cam Akers go third round, top 70 to the Los Angeles Rams. I could see a similar type of draft capital projection when it comes to Bigsby. And yeah, like you said, he's basically good at everything. He's a good athlete, finishes through contact, like you kind of said, creates behind the line of scrimmage. That Auburn offensive line was an absolute train wreck. So there's not really many holes in terms of his game, in terms of what you can really expect in that round 2 area of your rookie drafts.
Yeah, if he has the mindset to put it all together, a good running back coach can get some of the inefficiencies and the inconsistencies out of him, hopefully. And I mean, Daniel Jeremiah has talked about him as his favorite day 2 running back, which is encouraging because Daniel Jeremiah is obviously a huge name connected with what teams are thinking. Dane Brugler mocked him in the top 75 to the Rams, actually, to be the teammate of Cam Akers in the 7-round mock that we talked about the other day. So for me, the draft capital, as long as it's like 3rd round or better, I'm going to be all the way in on this guy because the framework is there for him to develop into a starting running back. I'll draft him at the 1-2 turn after the top, 3 to 5 wide receivers, depending on landing spots, and a guy like Michael Mayer are off the board if he goes day 2 of the NFL draft. If he goes day 3, probably mid to late 2nd round pick is probably where I would grab him.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything you basically said there on Tank. Your RB4 and my RB6. So the consensus leaves us at the RB4 for our FSC rankings. RB5, though, is going to be Chase Brown, Canadian himself out of Illinois. And basically what I have listed here for pros and cons, it's pretty funny, but pros, he's good at everything pretty much. No real holes in his game. Solid size, speed, receiving ability, held a workload at Illinois. But his cons are he's not elite at any single one thing. He's just kind of good across the board. That jack of all trades, master of none. I feel like he's going to be this high-end committee contributor, maybe, like your comp, Elijah Mitchell to him. He's going to be that guy that you can give a workload in pinches, but do I think he's ever going to be a true fantasy running back one? No.
Yeah, and that's actually why the next guy that we have, or the guy that we have at 7, I believe, I have ranked over Chase Brown now, is because I think there's more upside. But you kind of outlined it. If he does have one like trait that could be considered like very high end, I do think like his rushing instincts and his kind of shows up when you watch him run the ball, because he is very consistent down to down. He knows what to do. He knows how to set up defenders. He knows how to follow his blocks, that kind of stuff. But he can make people miss, but he's not great at it. He can run through you, but he doesn't have elite power. He's got good size, 5'9", 209, weighed at 215 at the Senior Bowl, so a little bit of size there, but he's not a massive dude either. So he can catch the ball out of the backfield, but he's not going to be a receiving threat. He's good in pass protection, but he's going to get overpowered at times. So he's kind of just one of these guys that has a lot of profile warts because he's not elite at anything. And also a lot of the efficiency metrics don't really love him. He doesn't, stand out as a great EPA running back or great missed tackles per attempt type of guy. And he also is a fifth-year player too. So he's a little bit older than some of these other running backs coming out. He's, I believe, 22 years old right now, fifth-year player. He's going to turn 23 midway through his rookie season. So that's also a little bit of a concern for him. But overall, I think, like you said, he's going to go to a team and he's probably going to get some work at some point because he plays the running back position and people ahead of him might get hurt or something. But I don't anticipate a team being like, we're set at running back. We have Chase Brown. Like, we're not going to ever draft another great running back in the draft if they slide to us. I just think he's probably like a short shelf life type of dynasty asset. Like, if you get him in like the mid to late second round of your rookie draft and he, is this year's Elijah Mitchell or this year's like Dameon Pierce, you're probably going to want to sell him midway through his rookie season or after his rookie season.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the names like that, like Elijah Mitchell, Khalil Herbert, guys like that, where, they're good NFL running backs. And I think Chase is going to be a good NFL running back. But like you kind of said, the team commitment at that point where, let's just say hypothetically, he goes to, I don't know, Arizona in the 4th or 5th round this year. And he's competing for touches behind James Conner, having that high end type of, handcuff type of appeal. If the Cardinals are absolutely awful next year, and if the Cardinals, let's just say, move on from James Conner after the season, I would not be shocked if at the top of the second round next year, they went with like a Raheem Sanders or they went with, a running back with better traits at that point. But at the end of the day, we're not drafting running backs for their projected long-term shelf life in the second round of your rookie draft. Like, if you're getting, potential RB1 type or RB2 type of utility with Chase Brown at any given point and Alexander Madison type of career, you mentioned the other names as well, I think it's still a bang of a pick.
Yeah, and I think he's perfect for contenders because I think he's going to be a high floor type of guy, give you at least handcuff or better type of value, and a guy that if he gets volume in the NFL probably will be good. So draft capital will be key for him. He's not expected to go super high in the NFL draft like you guys can see on the screen there. He's expected to go in like the 4th round, which is a little shocking because he tested very well, a lot better than I was expecting even.
4.43.
Ran, in the low 4.4s, 4.43. His relative athletic score is comparable to that of a guy like Jerick McKinnon, who is a great athlete. So with Chase Brown, you're talking about a guy that he also didn't really show that he was a great athlete during the game. Like, he plays not as fast as what he kind of tested as and not as good of an athlete as what he tested as. So that's a mini concern in and of itself. But as far as like where you take him in a rookie draft, mid to late second, if he gets good draft capital, probably, 3rd round dart throw if he goes on day 3 type of thing. But yeah, let's get into the next guy. And this is RB6 for us consensus. You have him much higher than I have him. I have him at RB8 or 9, I believe. You have him at RB4. So this is like our big time disagreement in as far as like where we have this guy ranked. And it's Devon Achane from Texas A&M. I'll let you take away the like rosy side of it, and then I'll kind of poke some holes in him.
For sure. So in terms of his pros, obviously this guy is an absolute freak of a mover. Elite speed, 4.32 overall, officially tested speed overall at the combine in his 40-yard dash. He outplayed an NFL talent in his own backfield 2 years ago with Isaiah Spiller. 232 touches in 2022, despite his status as a small back. So although he's this very small back, which I'm sure you're going to bring up in a second, he still was able to command a workload of 232 touches in his declare year. He's a guy that by PFF metrics has been very efficient, an 88 plus PFF rush grade each season of his college career, combining that with an 8.0% career explosive run rate, which across this whole class is actually tied for first with Tyjae Spears. And not to mention, I know you kind of said we're not really factoring in projected draft capital here, but I did use it a little bit because when it comes to Devon Achane, across the board, he's been the biggest lock outside of the top 3 backs to go on day 2 in the entire class. You guys can see he's ranked 67th overall across mock draft database, meaning people are expecting him to go on that 2-3 turn type of area. So in terms of projected draft capital right now, what we can kind of figure, he is the safest bet out of all the running backs to find his way with, 60th overall capital, 70th overall capital. I can't really say that about any other of the running backs in this range.
Yeah, like I said, I didn't factor draft capital into these, so that doesn't really factor in for me. You also really didn't talk about his other biggest skill set, which is his ability as a receiver. 13.1% target share, which is in the 90th percentile. So he can catch the ball. I don't think he's, Jahmyr Gibbs necessarily. I think he's more of like a good receiving back rather than like an elite receiving back like Jahmyr Gibbs is, but that's definitely a feather in his cap. Here's my issue with Devon Achane. It's not just the size. He is 5'9", 188 pounds, which would be a massive, massive outlier in the NFL. That's not the only reason I really don't like him as a prospect. The other reasons is because he plays small, man. That's like the big problem I have with him. He can't finish through contact. You watch Devon Achane for 3 or 4 game tapes, and you tell me how many times you see him break a tackle. It's a problem. He tries to run around everybody, and that'll work. He's fast. He's probably gonna be faster than most of the guys in the NFL as well. But to me, it doesn't scream a guy that's going to be, a guy that's a weekly fantasy producer. It's going to be a guy that gives you spike weeks in best ball, breaks off the long runs, but doesn't ever command a full workload and isn't really a guy that a team wants to build their rushing attack around. He's a complimentary back at the next level. And for me, how high does that really rise in dynasty running back rankings? Maybe like RB24, RB22 or something like that if he hits his ceiling. So contact balance is a concern for me. Also, one thing that I noticed as well was even though he's very fast in a straight line, he's not the most horizontally elusive running back in the class either. His elusiveness rating in this class was a lot lower than some of the guys that were, big backs and stuff. 26% tackles avoided per attempt for a jitterbug that runs in the 4.3s. To me, that's just not good enough for his skill set. And also, I think processing might be a bit of an issue for him as well because he has slow feet when he runs, which is weird for a guy that's this fast. But I don't think he processes rushing lanes and his instincts are altogether refined like some of the other running backs in this class. Like a guy like Dwayne McBride, for example, who's outside of our top 10. We're not going to talk about in this video. He plays very fast because he has good rushing instincts and he knows where he's supposed to be and when he's supposed to be there. But Devon Achane is more guessing and reacting rather than reading plays before they develop.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. And to your credit as well, in terms of the agilities, they were actually one of the weak points of his combine. 4.36 official shuttle, which is 4.43 grade according to MathBomb, and his 3-cone was a 7.85 or 7.05, sorry, which was a 6.7 grade according to MathBomb. Obviously, his straight lines are fucking fantastic. 9.97, 9.92, 9.96 in scores. So you kind of know what he's going to represent in the next level. If he's going to get his efficient touches, they're going to come via straight line in the receiving game, home run type of ability. So I do agree in terms of his overall workload, he's probably going to be limited by an NFL coaching staff. But to me, it kind of reminds me of what, early career Tony Pollard represented, where, he was only giving you 12 to 13 opportunities a game. But anytime he got those opportunities, he was giving you, RB2 level production. So I can see that being the high end area for what we can expect with Devon Achane. And if he gets the adequate draft capital, I can see a team using him in that regard.
I think they could, but he's 25 pounds lighter than Tony.
Oh, for sure.
Which is one thing that you have to keep in mind. For me, the cons just outweigh the pros. I think the pros are very strong, right? Like elite speed, good receiver, but those are his main 2 pros. And I also think, his production profile and his pedigree is a big time pro. Like you said, he was producing with Spiller on the field and stuff, but the cons, the size, the contact balance, the elusiveness, the instincts, they're just not there for me. He could develop some of that stuff, but to me, I'm just not overly excited about him.
Yeah, and I just want to quickly mention, it's kind of funny. This is how we end up with the running back class and the running back 4 to 13 area, like I mentioned, where we mentioned with Chase Brown how he's a jack of all trades, master of none running back at number 5. And then at number 6, you have the complete polar opposite of elite traits mixed with significant red flags when it comes to Devon Achane. It's pretty funny how the dynamic of this running back class works.
Yeah, and typically I favor the side of guys who can do everything but are not elite at something, because those guys have hit in recent years, Algier types, Damian Pierce types, guys like that. And this next guy fits the description perfectly because I think Roschon Johnson is significantly better than Devon Achane. He's my RB5 in this class, and I have him, graded quite a bit higher, and he's got way more strengths on my player cards than he does weaknesses, which is something I love about my running backs in this class. His pass pro and his toughness are probably borderline elite traits for him. I know they're not like really significant for like fantasy production, but I know NFL coaches will love them. That'll probably get him drafted high in the NFL draft. Best PFF pass blocking grade in the class, 67.4. He's massive, 6 foot, 220 pounds at the combine, 225 at the Senior Bowl when he weighed in. He's capable of carrying a workload, even though he was stuck behind Bijan Robinson all of his career. He has the size profile to actually carry a workload at the NFL level, and he has fresh legs. He's one of these BBWWs as well. He's a big back with wiggle, posted a 198 PFF elusive rating, which was the best in the class. Smaller sample than a lot of these guys, but still a very impressive number. 46% tackles avoided per attempt, also the best in the class. Again, smaller sample than most of the other guys. Contact balance is excellent. 19.1% of his routes he was targeted on as well. Top 8 yards per route run in the class at 1.18. So we have a big back who has, good wiggle, who's a good enough athlete, who has an ability to contribute on all 3 downs. The only issues is that he wasn't a very big producer in college. Obviously, he had a great excuse. He was playing behind the best running back prospects in Saquon Barkley. He doesn't have home run speed. He ran a 4.58 at the combine, which is good weight adjusted speed, but it still translates. He's not going to run away from people in the NFL. And his instincts and his experience kind of show up a little bit in the metrics as well, because his rush yards over expected was 3rd lowest in the class at negative 0.35. So you're seeing a guy that has the ability to work in, and it's like a committee back with Bijan, but he's not going to like do well with a big workload, at least in college. Maybe he can develop that skill set in the NFL. And for me, the framework is there for Roschon to become like a great NFL back, which is why I really like him as like a guy, if he gets 3rd round draft capital, like he's projected to go right now, that could command a workload in the NFL. Would not shock me at all if, when all is said and done, this is RB2 or 3 from this class. So right behind Bijan, or right behind Bijan and Gibbs, or whatever the case is. You got a big physical back who can make people miss, who can catch the ball. Never carried a big workload in college, but that kind of sounds like Ramondre Stevenson, which is exactly who my comp is for him. Dameon Pierce also kind of fit that description as well. I will be stoked if I can get this guy in the mid to late 2nd round of my drafts with, 2nd or 3rd round draft capital.
Yeah, like for the most part, like you kind of said, the question right now is the workload that he's had in college and his expected draft capital, because it says here 103, and like we kind of mentioned pre-recording, like that's right on the edge of 3rd round capital. If he gets that, all for it. Take him in the 2nd round, but if he falls to day 3, it does get kind of concerning. Maybe you get a Tyler Algier type at the best, but worst case scenario, it may be like an Isaiah Spiller type. So that's the risk right now. If he gets that day 2 capital, I have no problem with taking him in the mid 2nd round area of your rookie drafts, but it's yet to be seen. We'll see in a week.
Yeah, exactly. Roschon's an interesting case, but I think NFL teams are going to like him more than the media does, because he's a tough football player, and NFL teams always, especially old school coaches, they love that shit. They'll draft him in the 3rd round. If I had to place money on him to go 3rd round right now, I probably would. The next back that we're going to talk about, fall from grace from where he used to be earlier in the Dynasty landscape and Devy community, Sean Tucker, running back from Syracuse. His pros are pretty simple. He's one of these running backs that has great pros and bad cons, just like Devon Achane. Explosiveness. He's going to run in the 4.3s at his pro day next week. So for those of you guys that don't know, Sean Tucker had like a private workout in February, posted like these gaudy numbers, like 4.340, 40-inch vertical, like all these great numbers. How much are we buying those? I'm not sure. But the nice thing is that he's actually going to do a real pro day next week, because he was medically cleared to do activities. He didn't test at the combine, didn't do anything at Syracuse's regular pro day, but he's having a private one now for NFL teams. So we should get testing numbers on him. Decent BMI, right? 30 BMI, 5'9", 207 pounds. He was a productive back, good pedigree all of his college career. He's been on the Dynasty landscape, Devy radar for a while, and he carried a big workload in college. In pass protection, 3rd highest grade in the class, one of only 2 backs with 100% pass blocking efficiency. I believe Roschon Johnson was the other. And his receiving profile is great, 96th percentile target share, but he's not an efficient receiver. When you watch him run routes, he looks more like a Leonard Fournette getting a bunch of checkdowns receiver than he does like Jahmyr Gibbs getting a bunch of like designed receiving workload. And then his cons are kind of fundamental things for the running back position, which is what makes him a very difficult evaluation, because he didn't really make people miss, which is kind of a big deal for the running back position. In his sophomore year, he had like 101 elusiveness rating, which would have been about an average in this class. But this year, his elusive rating of 55.6, which was 2nd worst in the class. He doesn't utilize, ball carrier moves like stiff arms and, jukes and that kind of stuff very often. He kind of just runs around you. He has inconsistent power as well, just 2.79 yards after contact per attempt, which was the 4th lowest in this class. and he only broke a tackle on 9.3% of his carries, which was like dead last in this class, I believe, or lower end of the class as well. So very north and south, will translate in a great situation if he plays behind a great line and a great offense, but he might struggle if he has to create a lot on his own, and he's very undisciplined as a runner as well. Tries to out-athlete people at times. So I thought, you guys know I love Sean Tucker going into this process. But once I watched this film, I was like, these guys got warts, man.
He is the classic spreadsheet combatant where everybody who's doing their spreadsheets are going to see the workload, the speed, the size, the
Target
receiving
share.
profile, all of those factors, and be like, yo, like this guy's clear RB4 in this class. But like you kind of said, once you turn on the tape a little bit, once you watch him, he doesn't look like he knows how to play running back. He just knows, okay, I'm big, I'm fast, I'm going to get to the outside, and I'm just going to run around somebody. When you're 207 pounds, put your fucking shoulder down. Use his fucking stiff arm. Juke somebody. You still got great movement ability. Like, I don't know why he doesn't run to what his athletic capabilities would indicate. It's frustrating when you see it, and I'm sure everybody growing up has seen this one guy that was on their team and had all the athletic capabilities, but didn't seem to know how to play the sport. Sean Tucker's the type of guy, and the draft capital kind of shows that, man. This is a guy at the beginning of the offseason was projected to go in the mid to high end of the second round. You see right there about the 43, 44 mark was his ADP in mock drafts. That has shot down all the way to 127th. I don't know if I've ever seen a running back within a offseason cycle go from fringe top 40 to 127th projected in draft capital. And I'm concerned that 127th may be optimistic. This feels like he could fall round 5, round 6. I think Brugler had him in round 6 to the Chiefs in the recent mock draft we did. There are legitimate, in terms of draft capital, concerns when it comes to Sean Tucker. And I know we said at the beginning that we're not going to let it factor as much, but with Sean Tucker, I would be way more shocked if he sneaks into day 2 than if he fell to round 6 or round 7.
Yeah, I have him at 8 based on not including those draft capital concerns, like I said. But if you include those, he would probably be a little bit lower even for me.
Yep.
The nice thing about him is that if he does get half decent draft capital by some miracle, the dynasty community loves him, so he could accumulate value a lot easier. But I see a guy who's limited to like committee workload at the next level, probably spelled by a third down back or whatever the case is. Another one of these like mid-second to late second if he gets the capital, but he probably isn't going to. So probably most likely a third round rookie pick is what I would spend on Sean Tucker. So let's get to these last two guys real quick, and then we'll talk about some honorable mentions, guys that just missed out. Kendre Miller, running back from TCU. He has a pretty easy skill set to understand, right? He's a early down back, adequate between the tackles, 5'11", 215 pounds. He's elusive. He forced a missed tackle on 33% of his attempts. He broke tackles like a madman, top 4 back in the class, breaking tackles at a 16.5% rate. Good instincts, good vision, solid explosiveness. The only issues is that he's not good on third down. He did not have natural hands from what I saw from him on film. Wasn't deployed very much as a receiver, just a 32nd percentile target share. The mental side of pass protection kind of eludes him. He doesn't really know how to read the plays very much. He's physical and the effort is there, but he just doesn't really diagnose protection very well. His 31.2 pass blocking grade and 94.2 pass blocking efficiencies were both below average marks in the class. Didn't run or test at the combine because he's injured, which is another concern for him, which might affect his draft capital as well. And he probably only would have ran like mid 4.5s at the best too, because I don't think he has like elite speed. And he split a backfield most of his career with Zach Evans the first 2 years. And even this year, never exceeded a 40% dominator rating. So bit of a mixed bag with Kendre Miller, but I think NFL teams are going to look at this guy and see if we need an early down back in round 4, we're going to take Kendre Miller, but we're not taking him higher than that.
Yep, agreed with that. A contending type of team, Dallas, Buffalo, maybe Cincinnati, if they move off Mixon. Makes a ton of sense, like you kind of said. Early down, tone-setting type of back is what Kendrick can fill for these teams.
Yeah, but again, not people. There's a hive for Kendre Miller, right? People are like,
Yep.
"Oh man, he could be a 3-down back." It's like, when did we see that upside? He never showed anything on third down, and he never commanded a big workload. So to me, I don't see a guy that's going to just eventually become the next like James Conner 3-down back who can be a multi-time RB1. I just don't see that in his range of outcomes. So for me, he's kind of limited to like an early down back, one of the better ones in this class, but a guy that probably gets devalued by the NFL as a result. And I think mid to late second round, again, it's the same copy and paste, the same thing for every one of these guys. Good draft capital, mid to late second round. Bad draft capital, third round dart throw. We can pretty much stop saying that for every single guy because it's the same case for everybody. And then the final guy that we're going to get into, our RB10, and then we'll talk about some honorable mentions that just missed out, is Tyjae Spears, running back from Tulane. And I'll let you take it away with him.
Yeah, when it comes to Tyjae Spears, it's easy to see what he does well. So in terms of his pros, extremely elusive, 31.62% missed tackles forced per attempt, and a PFF elusiveness rating of 144. So extremely good figures there. He also averaged 1.35 rushing yards over expected in his career, including a 90.6 PFF grade. So PFF really looks at him, says he's this elusive running back. All the numbers confirm that. He's clearly an elusive running back. In terms of his receiving ability, 73 PFF receiving grade, 1.24 yards per route run. Although he wasn't asked to do it a lot in college, which is one of his cons we'll get into in a second, when he was asked to do it, he showed the capabilities. And not to mention, for a smaller back, he showed that he could play through contact. 4.55 yards after contact per attempt, which actually ranks second in the class. So overall, this is your down-to-down, consistent runner that contributed on third downs. Similar to a guy like Michael Carter a couple years ago. I think Michael Carter had a better overall profile, better overall receiving profile, but in terms of role in the NFL, can have some RB2 success in certain pinches, but not a guy that we can expect to, be this RB16 overall in Dynasty after his rookie season.
Yeah, real quick, just to like summarize some comps there, because we forgot to talk about them a little bit. Devon Achane, my comp for him was like Javid Best. Roschon Johnson, I think I mentioned Ramondre Stevenson was my comp for him. Sean Tucker is kind of like a poor man's Travis Etienne. Like everything that we said that was bad about Etienne coming out of Clemson is kind of true of Sean Tucker. And then with Kendre Miller, he's kind of like a Brian Robinson type, like good early down back, but probably not going to provide too much value there. And my comp for Tyjae Spears, like you said, Michael Carter, perfect example, pretty much the exact same athletic testing, same size, 200 pounds, 5'9", runs in the low 4.5s. He ran like a 4.48, I believe, at his pro day. If you adjust that, it's like a 4.53 if he would have ran at the combine. Doesn't have like great tackle breaking ability, 10% tackles broken per attempt, which was like below average in this class. Ideal size kind of eludes him a little bit. And like you said, even though he like looks like he should be a good receiver, he wasn't overly productive as a receiver. He was only, up at like a 50 percentile target share. I think that could change in the NFL level. I think he's good on third down when you watch him. But a guy that probably needs a good coaching staff and a good landing spot to kind of bring that out in him. And home run speed, size, profile blemishes as well. He's not an early declare, undersized, played, a subpar conference at Tulane there. So, and also potential injury concerns that we've heard from the NFL as well. So, kind of a mixed bag with Tyjae Spears. He's going to be interesting. If he goes in the third round, which I would say of these backs, he's definitely one of the better draft capital projections. We've seen him go in the third round. He's ranked right now at 85th overall, which is very good. I've seen him go in the second round at times as well, but we don't know exactly if the injury is going to factor in or not.
That's exactly what I was going to mention. Like, it's listed at 85th overall right now, and oddly enough, outside of the top three in Devon Achane, he is the next highest running back according to Mock Draft Database. But like you kind of said, the problem here is, does he slip down the board? Obviously, a lot of medical concerns there, I believe, with his ACL from 2021. Had some complications there. I believe there was a period in time where he did not touch a football field, did not practice or play on a football field for 11 months. Like, again, that's a year and a half removed. But if NFL teams are looking at that and maybe determining he has, for example, there's some cartilage issues in his knee. There's some meniscal issues in his knee. Maybe there's some unrepaired stuff in his knee that may limit his longevity. If a team views that and drops him from maybe a third round grade and won't want to take him until the fifth round, we're going to have to factor that into a certain degree. Again, we mentioned we're not going to overly think some of this stuff because we don't know. But from what we're hearing right now, it does sound like a pretty significant concern in NFL circles.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's definitely concern number one for Tyjae Spears is does he, slide right to like sixth round territory if he's going to be, dealing with injuries and medically red flags. So that's definitely interesting for sure. The guys that just missed out, I actually have Dwayne McBride with the exact same grade as Tyjae Spears. But the issue in the separation there is the projected draft capital, if Spears is healthy, is going to be better. So that's kind of the tiebreaker between those two guys. But Dwayne McBride, I think, is like almost just like a poorer man's version of Kendre Miller. He's likely a day three running back. He's a middling athlete, but he's a great early down running back. He is very good vision, very good through contact, good elusiveness, but he's a 0 on third down, even more so than Kendre Miller. Has like one of the worst target shares you'll ever see. Played at UAB, so it wasn't great competition as well. And then a couple other guys that just missed out. Israel Abanikanda. I'm sure people are going to be like, where the hell is Izzy Abanikanda? He tested so well. How could you not have him on this list? Listen to me carefully before you go down to the comment section. He's a great athlete. Don't get me wrong. He tested way faster than he plays, though. He does not play as fast as he tested. He's not elusive. He's not particularly creative, but he's got good size, and he's one of the youngest backs in this class, and he's a great athlete. So there's a good framework for Izzy Abanikanda, and he's not much far off from some of these guys. He's like 20 points lower than like my RB7, so he's not that far off. I just don't trust running backs who don't avoid tackles, and he avoided tackles at a 21% rate, and he ranked dead last in this class at breaking tackles, despite being 216 pounds, which doesn't make any sense. Deuce Vaughn was breaking tackles more often than Izzy Abanikanda, which should never happen on planet Earth. So that's why Izzy Abanikanda is not as high. The size, the athleticism, the young age, that's all well and good. But the on-field production, watch his film before you go down to the comment section. I promise you, you probably won't like him very much.
Yeah, no, watch the tape, like Corey said. The testing is great, though. And, like people are going to see that. People are going to think, oh, this is like Jonathan Taylor on steroids. Because people, as soon as, like, that's always happens. As soon as somebody sees this high pro day 40, they're going to look at some of the best running backs in the NFL that are already fast. And if somebody tests faster, are going to make the comparison. Oh, he's just a faster version of that guy. No, you like Corey said, Deuce Vaughn was breaking more tackles than Izzy Abanikanda. And finally, the last guy we're going to quickly talk about, another guy that people are going to probably be clamoring down for in the comments is Zach Evans, Debbie Darling himself.
Yeah, he's explosive. He has good athleticism. He finishes his runs and he plays tough. Those are the pros with Zach Evans. But his size profile came in lower than we expected. He was listed 212. He came in at 202 at 5'11". That BMI is pretty bad. His injury concerns may affect his draft capital as well, because he hasn't done any testing realistically throughout this entire draft process. And he's not good on third down. He has like this like look of somebody that'd be good on third down, but his receiving metrics were bad. He dropped the ball constantly, and his instincts and his vision were questionable for a lot of the film guides that I trust, and I also saw that as well. So for me, Zach Evans is like this shot out of a cannon, really explosive. He's kind of almost like Sean Tucker a little bit too, except Sean Tucker had like great receiving metrics.
Yeah, no, and I like Zach Evans to a certain degree, what he can do for an NFL committee. Again, like another guy where if he lands in San Francisco, he lands in Dallas, they need an early down, between the tackles, gut punch type of running back. He's going to be able to provide it. Again, would it have been a lot better if he weighed in at 212 and it fit the play style a lot more? Sure. But it's still the play style at the end of the day. He's still going to finish through contact. He's still going to, reach the second level, get yards after contact. And he's probably going to figure in late third round to fifth round type of area.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my comp for Zach Evans was like a better version of Darrell Henderson. So, I mean, he has that kind of skill set. Izzy Abanikanda's comp for me was Tevin Coleman, if you want to think of an idea, like a north and south linear type of runner, but not going to break a lot of tackles or create much on his own. And if Abanikanda goes like third round of the Eagles, that's a good situation for him. He doesn't have to break a lot of tackles behind that offensive line and in that offense. And then Dwayne McBride, to me, just complete zero on third down, Damian Harris. Like he's exactly the same type of running back as a guy like Damian Harris. So those are the guys that just missed out. We mentioned Deuce Vaughn as well. He's just way too small. He's probably a fourth round dart throw, but he is talented. And I would be remiss if I didn't at least mention him at this point. Eric Gray, another guy that's good on third down, but not really a complete profile. Anybody else that you want to talk about?
Well, quickly on Deuce Vaughn, I will say, you mentioned it is sad that we can't talk about him as a top 10 running back due to the size. Like if this guy was legitimately 5'10", 100 or not 100, but like 205 pounds, 5'10", 205, we'd be talking about him as like maybe the RB4 in this class. Like that is how good he is in terms of a profile, in terms of, the receiving ability that he showed. It's just the size, man. What is he? 5'6", $170. Like, dude.
He's 5'5" and a half, $176, I believe, is what his official weight was. Yeah, and then there's other guys in this class. I'm sure people will be like, "Where's Evan Hull? He had a great receiving profile at Northwestern." I mean, he tested well too. I didn't like what I saw from him on film. And same with Chris Rodriguez from Kentucky, also big, good, good tone setting type of profile, but I didn't think he was all that dynamic or all that good on film. So that's pretty much the entire running back class. We got through pretty much every single guy. I don't think we forgot too many of them. Keaton Mitchell from East Carolina, also a name that people think he's really small as well. So I'm not too excited about him, but we'll see, man. Draft capital can change things. If Evan Hall's a third round pick, we're going to have to start talking about him a little bit more than we did in this video. So if you guys enjoyed, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel. If you guys are new around here, check out the quarterback video that we did yesterday. If you want to hear an in-depth look on the top 5 quarterbacks, tomorrow will be wide receivers. The next day will be tight ends as well. And if you want access to all of our rookie rankings, all of our dynasty rankings, first dibs on dynasty decisions, all that good stuff, all of our bonus content, plus the bonus content of some of your favorite dynasty creators, including Mason at Fantasy Flock, Zach and Badake at Dynastyland, and Pierre and Chris over at Fantasy Endgame, then check out flockfantasy.com and use the promo code FSE when you sign up for 30% off, a free 2-day trial, 6 months off when you sign up annually. All that good stuff is available using promo code FSE, and you can also get first dibs on dynasty decisions, like you guys know, for using our promo code versus the other creators in the space. So that being said, peace out, and we'll talk to you soon.